let's get going. Here's a real photo. When I say real photo, from Jane and Finch Mall at the parking lot with the Corner Commons, which is a project put on by the Jane and Finch Center. And this particular photo was for programming that was produced by Flaunt It Movement. So just setting the scene. Over to the next slide. All right, so why are we here today? What are we going to be covering? Here are the kind of the bullet points, right? So what and where is the Cultural Hotspot program? So a bit about the history about the Cultural Hotspot as well too, you'll get. What funding is available? How much funding is available? What kinds of funding is available? You'll learn that. How can you participate and engage in the Cultural Hotspot? It could be where you want funding. It could be maybe as a volunteer. It could be as a resident. It could be providing feedback and insight. So there's different ways that you can engage with Cultural Hotspot. We'll get into the application nitty and gritty about what the process is like, deadline dates, and the supports, which is really important, the support that is available. You're not just on your own. If you need help throughout the application process or want to bounce ideas off of any of the team members that are here today, that's what we're here for. And we'll tell you how you can get in touch with us as well too. So everything will be fully transparent and available, and then we will have the Q&A at the end too. Next slide. Okay, so a little bit about the history of the Creative Capital, the Cultural Hotspot program is that it actually came out of a report in 2011 called the Creative Capital Gains Report. And fun fact, going back all the way to 2011, the song of the year in 2011 was, on the Billboard charts, the single was Adele. Adele, anybody Adele? It's her Rolling in the Deep, 2011. So anyway, that's a fun fact from 2011 to take you way, way back. But it's all kind of initiated out of this Creative Capital Gains report in 2011, where the report recommended that there be a cultural hotspot that would highlight all the great work already being done in neighborhoods outside of the downtown core. And that's where we really came in. And we came in, the Cultural Hotspot program was initiated in 2014. So this is now our 10th year in 2013. Next year will be our 11th year. And we really are here to provide funding and opportunities to artists, to not-for-profits and cultural organizations and community-based organizations, resident organizations, to lead community-engaged arts programming. So all of this is through a competitive application process. And over a 10-year span, the Cultural Hotspot has dispersed $2.3 million to arts and cultural groups. And we're looking forward to working in Jane and Finch in 2024 and in 2025. So 2 years, we'll be with you and you'll be with us, and it'll be a beautiful relationship. Over to the next slide. So as I said, we're going to be in Jane and Finch in 2024, and with Jane and Finch, we really want to highlight what's already happening within Jane and Finch, all the great organizations and artists that are already working within Jane and Finch that do need a little bit more support through funding and through promotion and through marketing to demonstrate what people on a local level already know, is that Jane and Finch is a cultural hotspot, and there's an important role that we can play in shifting perceptions about what Jane and Finch is, and we look forward to be doing that. So where exactly are we demarcating Jane and Finch? Because when people say Jane and Finch, it's more than just an intersection, and in terms of like a geographic boundaries, for our programming purposes and what we want to prioritize in terms of like a area or a district, it's going to Steeles Avenue to the north, Wilson Avenue to the south, Weston Road to the west, and Keele Street to the east. And we've broken it down as well too, to be a bit more specific if you're curious, is what postal codes we're prioritizing. And those postal codes are both from applications that we might be receiving, from as well as where the programming is going to be happening. So postal codes M3N, M3M, M3L, and M3J will receive priority. What does this all look like? Over to the next slide. If you're a visual person, sometimes it helps to have visuals. Oh, there it is. There's the map. There's some visual. So that gives like a rough idea as to our boundary for the cultural hotspot in Jane and Finch. I know that if you'll notice that some of the shading, the green shading, goes a little past Weston, a little bit north of Steeles, and a little bit further east than Keele. So we're not necessarily going to be like a strict line. There is like always some wiggle room. It really depends upon the application and what the application can demonstrate as to the connection between the project activity or the group or the person that might still be serving Jane and Finch. I give an example that the Flaunt It movement, so the very first photo that you saw on the cover slide, their now like studio space is actually located outside of these boundaries, but they serve Jane and Finch. So just know that there is some possibility to have some wiggle room, but there needs to be a demonstrated connection if you are applying for funding as to who we're trying to prioritize. Over to the next slide. Oh, did we skip something? Here we go. So cultural hotspot projects must. So are some key points as to what we're looking for in terms of eligibility or for real requirements. All projects must contribute to and celebrate the artistic and cultural life of the Jane and Finch community. Our programming window is from June 1st to October 31st. So it's about, it's what, 5 months? 5 months, 5 month window, if I'm doing my math correctly on my fingers. Sometimes life happens and surprises happen with curveballs, and there are delays and other things get impacted, where there sometimes like, projects can be extended. And in order for that extension to really happen, there just needs to be a dialogue and a communication between the funding recipient and us that, hey, this happened, can we extend the project into November, December? And then we have that ability to ship things forward. But from like the very get-go, our programming window to try to complete everything is June 1st, and what's on our marketing materials is June 1st to end of October. All the programming must be free and open to the public. So whether they're workshops, whether there's screenings or any kind of an event or a festival, all of those have to be free and open to the public. Some things can be like on a register basis. So if there's a workshop, people can register and then they can attend and participate. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like a drop-in where everybody comes. You're still able to put in caps as to how many people can attend a workshop, or if the workshop is for a specific group of people as well too, say for Black youth, that could be very specific and it's targeted and really supporting Black youth. So there is a more of a focus. Projects have to be feasible and realistic. So what that really comes down to is that based upon the funding dollars amount that you're applying for and the funding stream, is your project scope in terms of how many days it is, how many hours is it actually possible to achieve based upon the budget that you have? So that's where the feasible and realistic comes in. Sometimes we've received applications that want to put on like, a multi-day festival, but they're only applying for say $9,000. So there's always more of a challenge to make that happen for $9,000, but a one-day festival more likely as an example. So we help with that as well too. It's not a clear cut if like if things are slightly off or there needs to be an adjustment. If your application is really, really strong and there's merit for the project, and you can demonstrate there's a community need, these things can be shifted, and that communication would happen after the fact, in order for a project to be approved. We also encourage, it's not always possible for all groups, but we do encourage that you bring some additional resources. So those additional resources could be through other dollars of funding. But if it's not something where you can access funding, be it through other grants or from your own organization, harder to do if you're a community-based organization. But if not, maybe you could provide a group of people that are volunteering. We look at volunteer hours as an in-kind resource. So one volunteer hour we say is worth approximately $21 an hour. So you can put that into your budget as an in-kind contribution and an additional resource. Over to the next slide. So priority may be given to projects that support emerging local artists. So we do really look for that. So I think there's a couple of artists that who've introduced themselves that I've already shared here today. So we want to support emerging local artists. We really want to be making sure that we're engaging with equity deserving communities, be that with Indigenous, BIPOC communities, be that with equity deserving communities such as youth or women experiencing violence or homeless. Those are some of the equity groups that we are wanting to be working with and supporting through programming. We do want to ensure that we are providing as much opportunity as possible for local youth job placement or mentorship. And the mentorship can be paid or unpaid. But we'll get into a bit more nitty gritty, and Lori will get into specifics about how our funding streams really try to prioritize that. And we have some funds specifically earmarked for youth employment or paid mentorship. As I mentioned before, we do want to prioritize applications coming in from Jane and Finch. So the boundary of the map that we shared, and the postal codes. But we also recognize that there are individuals and people that have a connection to Jane and Finch, perhaps have been displaced from Jane and Finch for whatever reason, be it for gentrification or other reasons, but they are also encouraged to apply. Over to the next slide. So project streams and funding. So the Cultural Hotspot program, we're investing roughly $280,000 in funding in 2024 for community engaged arts. And we're going to be doing that through 3 funding streams. So the first one is called Signature Projects. It's the big ticket and the bit more shiny because you can get up to a maximum of $22,000. But just you want to be make sure that it's the right funding stream for you. So I think that's the kind of key that I'll stress, is that choose the right funding stream for you, and that's where you can speak with us as well too, anybody from the team. But it's primarily for organizations that have already successfully delivered mid to large size community-based arts and cultural projects. So ideally you have a track record. If you have never done anything before, this is not the funding stream for you. That's where we have a Spark project where you can apply up to $9,000 maximum. And that's more catering for new, emerging, but also established local artists and arts and community organizations. And these are the 2 funding streams that we have available right now, and that you can apply for. The Ignite Ideation will be opening up our funding window for that in the spring of 2024. We're just in the middle of our very first cohort of funding recipients, and the point of Ignite is to support artists, artist collectives, and small not-for-profits who want to take time to focus on their creative development. So it's about capacity building, it's about testing, and just building your own capacity as an artist. That could be through mentorship. It could be through taking workshops. It could be just on developing your own craft or spending time on learning a new instrument if you're a musician, so you can build your own skills. Over to the next slide. Oh, oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna pass it over now to my colleague Lori, and she will get into more of the nitty-gritty about signature projects and Spark projects and Ignite. Lori.
Thank you much, Naval. All right, so as you've heard, the Hotspot has two project funding levels. Signature project, as mentioned, is the higher funding level and is for established organizations that have previous experience delivering mid to large size community art projects. So these are projects that provide residents and community members opportunities to engage in a new project or creation of a culminating component towards a project. This means they can participate in workshops, activities that lead up to a final exhibition, event, or initiative. And youth job placement and mentorship is a required component of signature projects, so it's part of the base funding that's provided. The base funding available for signature projects is $20,000. So of that $22,000, $20,000 goes towards the base requirements. And then we do have $2,000 additional dollars available for accessibility supports to make the project more inclusive of persons with disabilities. Typically in a funding year, there are up to 8 signature projects. It does depend on the types of applications we get within each category of Spark or signature, but we're looking at up to 8 signature projects. Next slide. Thank you, Emma. So some examples of signature projects from 2022 in Little Jamaica. In the top left corner, we have Animating Little Jamaica by Art Starts, which was a series of art activations that took place at the Afro-Caribbean Farmers Market. Just beside that on the right is Udaya Oakwood, which was a one-day community festival that highlighted local talent and vendors from the area. It was presented by Nia Center for the Arts. And along the bottom, we have the culminating mural titled Our Crowns, which was from a project called The Main Event. The project was presented by Steps Public Art in collaboration with a local resident, Deandra Montague. It was a series of hair care and self-expression community-focused workshops that were held at local beauty salons and venues in the community. The discussions from participants and their stories were taken and used to inspire the mural that's now located at Strader and Oakwood. And it might look familiar because we've used it as a part of our promotion for this year. We're quite fond of the mural. We think it's absolutely gorgeous. Next slide. All right, so Spark projects. So this one is intended for independent emerging local artists or organizations that may not have as much or very little experience running community-focused projects. You can receive up to $7,500 again for the base, with an additional $1,500 to support youth mentorship or job placement opportunities. So youth employment isn't a required component of Spark projects, but we do have additional funds to support the option to include that, which gives you a total of $9,000. They should celebrate local arts and culture and community in the hotspot, similar to the signature. And they're smaller scale events. So the one great thing about Spark is if you have a much larger project with just a singular component that you want to fund, Spark is a great option because it gives you that $7,500 or $9,000 option to focus all your funds towards one component of a larger festival or a larger 3-day event or initiative in the community. Any independent artist that's applying for Spark will require a trustee. You can let us know if you need a trustee, if you already have one, if you don't know where to start, if you're just not sure what a trustee is. The Hotspot team can try to put you in contact with an organization that may be a good fit. And we do have a couple of resources to support trusteeship and building that trustee relationship with an organization. And typically in one funding year, it's up to 10 Spark projects. Again, depends on the applications, but that's about average that we're looking at. Thanks, Anna. So some examples of Spark projects. These are actually from 2022 when the Hotspot had 2 focus areas. One was Little Jamaica and one was Golden Mile in Scarborough. So in the top left corner, we have cameras in the community. which was a photography workshop series for 8 to 12-year-olds that culminated in a final exhibition at the Black Business and Professional Association on Eglinton West, their offices. And then on the top right, we have, as Masani is very familiar with, it's a photo from the Canadian Reggae Music Association that received Spark funds to support the Black Youth Music Project, where participants performed at Rostafest. So again, this is one of those examples where a component was funded by Spark as part of a much larger festival and event. And the bottom photos, on the bottom left, we have Golden Mile Memories. This was an archival photo exhibition and photography project, and new photographies, that was organized by a local youth. It was called Golden Mile Memories. The photos were exhibited at the cricket pitches at Ashton B Park. And then on the bottom right, we have Golden Mile Zines, which Makers Collective. It was 3 youth from the neighborhood that had do-it-yourself workshops that culminated in a zine exhibition that was put on display at a Toronto Public Library branch in the neighborhood. They also provided participants, aside from their own final product, they put out a small amount of zines that people in the community could take home with them at the library. All right, so as Naval mentioned, the Ignite ideation funding isn't project-based, it's more research and development. We piloted this year, and it's more focused on allowing artists, creatives, and emerging community leaders to focus on developing their idea in hopes of having that branch out or build into a much larger project. The Ignite Ideation Fund provides up to $5,000 to support research, development, and exploration. And it doesn't require an end result that's a deliverable. It's more about capacity building. So the funds have been dispersed for this year, but we would really encourage everyone to please keep an eye out on our website for late spring 2024, when we'll be launching the next round of Ignite applications. Okay, so the application process itself, anyone interested in applying for 2024 Hotspot Projects funding that has received funding in a previous cycle will have to close up that project first before being able to apply for funding in a new cycle. So how the Hotspot team considers a project closed is by submitting a final report. Once that report's been processed, then you're welcome to continue with more funding, but we do need one project to close before you start a new one. And then the steps are, number 1, which you're already doing, is attend a Hotspot funding info session. So great, you're already done. Next is to connect with a Hotspot team member. We do like to have sort of open communication channels start right from the beginning before the applications are submitted. It's a way that we increase success rates. We like to hear ideas. There might be something that doesn't quite align with our funding requirements. So we like to have those discussions in advance and make sure that your project is fully formed. We might also know another funding opportunity that's a better fit. So reach out to us. Our emails will be available later, and we can start that discussion. Next thing you have to do is actually go to the application, which opened October 16th. The application is open until January 22nd of next year. So we do encourage everyone to take a look, go through the required documentation, which is the written application itself and a budget component, put your questions together, and then reach out to us. And we can go through sort of a preliminary draft of your application and answer any questions you have in advance. Oh, and the applications do close at 11:59 p.m. on January 22nd. So keep that in mind. Next slide. So after you submit an application, the timeline that happens for the team is we do put together a community advisory panel, which is local or displaced or current residents and community members. They come and review the proposed projects. This is part of our assessment window, and it takes place in February. We then let all applicants know that their application status, so it's either that there's some details that didn't quite fit or we needed to flesh out better, we have some questions on, and then we start that communication, or it's a direct yes. And we aim to get the initial status and funding amount notifications out by March. So after those details have been worked out, with all applicants. All successful applicants will receive a letter of agreement or an LOA, and that outlines expectations, requirements, and obligations. The LOA does need to be signed by the project lead and returned to us, the Hotspot team, for signatures from City of Toronto managers before the funds can be released. So artists or trustees that haven't received funding from the city in the past will also be required to complete direct deposit forms and have a vendor account created. So keep that in mind, because the longer that an LOA isn't signed or that a funding recipient holds on to their LOA or financial documents, that puts a delay on dispersing and depositing the funds on our end. We don't want to hold back any money. Next slide. Okay, so if you're planning on putting on a much larger project, and unfortunately the 22,000 or the 9,000 doesn't quite work and it doesn't quite cover what you want, there are other granting bodies that have options. We can mail out this presentation to everybody after, so you can check out what Artreach, Street Art, Toronto Arts Council, and Ontario Arts Council have. Some of these organizations have very specific criteria or requirements, but they also have sort of rolling deadlines that are open throughout the year. So you might qualify for something that you're not aware of. Take a look. You can have a discussion with us as well, because we do have colleagues within other sections of the city that have funding opportunities. So if you're looking for film, music, let us know. And these are people that we can put you in contact with as well. All right, so key dates. As mentioned, application's already up, ready to go. You can take a look. We'll put the link to our funding opportunities page later in chat. The next deadline date is January 22nd, 2024, 11:59 p.m. Then we have our assessment window, where the team kind of goes quiet and does the behind the scenes work, the notification period in March, and then the hotspot launches in June. So if you aren't interested in necessarily applying for Spark and Signature just yet, and maybe Ignite is something that you're interested in 2024, we would still really love everyone to participate in the hotspot. So keep an eye out on our website to see what sort of events we have coming up as of June. Okay, and so for more information, again, we'll send this out to everybody, but our individual emails and phone numbers are up on the screen right now. You can also email our general inbox, which is culturalhotspot@toronto.ca. We'll put that in the chat later. And if you want to reach out to any member of the team, have some preliminary discussions, please feel free. We can set up a one-on-one at another time before the January 22nd deadline to get the conversation going. And that's the bulk of it. Are there any questions?